Chapter 4, A Walk in the Park. I had never, as long as I could remember, had someone who wanted to spend time with me. My creators had died when I was very young and I couldn't remember anything about either of them. Crescent had sent me away as soon as she thought I was old enough and intelligent enough to keep quiet about my abilities. Teachers and other adults had always just wished they didn't have to deal with me. They were too busy with the needs of the other students and with their own lives. Either that, or I could feel their pity eating at me like a slow, numbing poison. I assumed it would always be that way until the Orni offlined, or the Orni snapped and went completely insane. Searchlight huffed a bored sigh. We had worked on the project almost every Orn since he had his idea about the oral report. We had almost enough sources to start working on the paper. We were in the library. It was evening and the place was just barely crowded enough to be a distraction. I would have preferred Searchlight's room, especially if Ratchet was gone. Are you any good at writing? Searchlight asked. He'd been thinking about the question for a while, so I was prepared with an answer. I'm AA alright. I can write the paper if you want. Nah, I should at least help. Maybe you could do some of the revising though. I'm awful at writing. I absolutely hate it. I never know how to word things. I'd actually rather write the whole thing myself. I knew plenty about the sections he was planning to write. I'd been listening to his thoughts as he read and researched, so I had all the information he'd found as well. Searchlight skimmed through a file. He probably ought to actually read and sighed again. I am sick of this, he said. If I study anymore my processor's going to melt and dribble out my optics. I mentally cringed at the thought. Then I shook my helm. So, what do you say we take the rest of the Orn off and get out of this scrap heap of a school? We were allowed to leave of course, but I rarely did. The crowds did not tend to agree with me, and I always came back with a terrible processor ache. No thanks, I told him. He could go if he wanted. He raised an optic ridge as he stood and stuck the data pad back on the shelf in the wrong place. I am not letting you sit here all evening and study. Come on, Soundwave, Searchlight said. It'll be fun. I bet you don't get out of this place often enough. Or at all. And furthermore, just because we were working on a project together did not make us friends. I cast around for an excuse that would sway him. You don't honestly want to sit around and read about history. I would rather do that than risk pushing my processor to the point of crashing by going out where there could be crowds. Come on, let's go. I just had to say no thanks. He was almost ready to drop it. I had to say no thanks and go back to my room and keep Ravage company. I shouldn't pretend I could have friends. Soundwave, Searchlight said. On the other hand, I could bring Ravage. He liked coming out of my room, and especially getting out of the school. And it had been too long. Fine. Don't sound so worried. It's not against the rules. And we still have plenty of time to finish the project. That was not what I had been worried about. I got up. I did want to borrow a few data pads. Searchlight waited for me to check them out. We should go ask Ratchet if he wants to come, Searchlight said. I don't think that will go very well. He's in kind of a dangerous mood right now, or he was right after his last class. I held up the data pads. Yeah. And you need to take those to your room. Let's go ask Ratchet first. It's on the way. I followed him out of the library, feeling thoughtful. Searchlight did actually consider us friends for some reason. Maybe that wasn't a terrible thing. It might even last until the project was over. I could go along with it until then. And after that, I'd just push him away. We got out into the hallway and started walking toward Searchlight's room. Bored. Surely there's a better place to wait. Motormaster. I stopped. Searchlight, wrapped up in his own thoughts about where we ought to go once we were out in the city, kept going. I think we should go another while. What? They were waiting for us. I could hear them now that we were close enough and I was paying attention. They were waiting for Searchlight, really. They had noticed him in the library and set up an ambush on his route back to his room. I contemplated just saying never mind and letting it go. Verdict was determined to make Searchlight pay for questioning his absolute authority. Once they'd done so, they'd probably move on go back to terrorizing everyone equally. But I wasn't sure Searchlight could be made sorry for standing up to them. And I didn't want to let him walk right into something like that, especially since I was walking with him. Soundwave? What's wrong? I think I trailed off. I hated talking. I hated it so much. Erdic Day and his friends are eating. What makes you think that? Good question. I heard them talking about it early ear. I meant to tell you. Huh, Searchlight said. Maybe we should just go talk to them. They don't own the hallways. He couldn't possibly be that stupid. I don't want to drag anybody else into something like that, though. Soundwave looks pretty worried. Let's go around, he smiled suddenly. They can sit in that hall for the rest of the on-cycle waiting. He seemed to like that idea even more than the idea of confronting them. Taking a longer route brought us to my room first. I went in and set my data pads on my desk. Ravage uncurled from his position on the berth and leapt up onto my shoulders with an unhappy growl. Where do you keep going? Sorry, I said, I have a project. Do you want to get you out of here for the rest of the Orn? Ravage's anger turned to excitement almost instantly. Really? I nodded and walked out of the room. Ravage hissed as he saw Searchlight in the hallway. Searchlight leaned back a little. Wow, that is a crazy big symbiote. He was impressed, but not frightened. Did anything frighten him? This is Ravage, I said, then gestured to the other fledgling. Searchlight. Searchlight nodded. Nice to meet you, Ravage. Ravage still felt a little doubtful. He wasn't happy with the other students in the school in general. It's okay, I told Ravage. Say your Searchlights, I glanced at him. I'm a friend, Searchlight said. Then he looked at me for confirmation. Yes, I said. Sort of for now at least. But Searchlight was new here. Even if I didn't push him away after the project was finished, he'd eventually find other friends who were more interesting to spend time with, and I would be forgotten. Ravage relaxed a little, still uncertain but appeased for the moment. You don't mind if Rava H comes? I said. Nah, he can come. We can go to the park. I think they allow symbiotes there. Okay, Searchlight said. Let's go ask Ratchet if he wants to come. I nodded and closed and locked my door. On our way, I caught the bullies in my range for a few moments. They'd stopped a little femme and were picking on her. I was surprised to find I was tempted to tell Searchlight about it, but I'd have no way to explain how I knew. And we were trying to avoid them in any case. I was used to listening to them pick on everyone else. Why was it suddenly bothering me? Searchlight, oblivious to my inner conflict, walked in front of me, thinking. Awkward silence, as usual. Really, this fledgling? I could hear Ratchet clearly from a ways away. He was studying hard for a philosophy test. Searchlight was also in that class, so he should have been studying too. Maybe he'd realize that when we got there and change his mind about going out. But then Ravage would be disappointed. We got to Searchlight's room and he opened the door. Ratchet was sitting on his berth, face almost touching a datapad, optics narrowed. Hey, Ratch. Ratchet looked up. Annoyance flashed through his processor at being interrupted. Then his optics widened. What is that thing? Ravage leapt from my shoulders before I could do anything to stop him. Ratchet squeaked and dove off the berth, which turned out to be a bad idea because Ravage landed on the floor as well. I wasn't entirely sure why Ravage had done that. There was nothing angry in his processor, just curiosity and maybe a little too much enthusiasm. Ratchet, on the other hand, was so terrified he wasn't thinking about anything but hiding. He streaked under the berth and Ravage started to follow him. I realized I should probably intervene. Ravage, no. He skidded to a stop halfway under the berth, then backed out and looked at me, feeling just a little hurt. What did I do? I beckoned him over, and he leapt up onto the desk, then my shoulders again. Do auntie jump at anyone like that? But I wasn't going to hurt him. Searchlight sighed. Well, that was brilliant. I'm so sorry why, I said to him. Not your fault. He sat down on the floor. Ratch, you alright? There was no response for a while. I could hear him under the bed, though, core overloaded with terror. Do you get that thing away from me, he said in a strained, high-pitched voice. He won't hurt you. It tried to kill me. What do you mean it won't hurt me? I looked at Ravage, who hunched down a little. I'm sorry. I guess I scared him. That was kind of the point, though. He wasn't really sorry. He's sorry, Searchlight said. He won't jump on you again. I didn't say that second part, Ravage thought. He had better not do it again. Get it out of here. Searchlight reached under the berth and dragged Ratchet out. The little orange and white youngling curled up, arms protectively over his helm, shaking. Wow, you're actually scared, Searchlight said. He must not know what it looks like when a symbiote that big jumps at you and actually means to hurt you. I felt Ravage tense as if about to spring again. I reached up and grabbed one clawed feed. "Aw, Ravage thought, but it's so funny. I won't actually hurt him. Of course I'm terrified. Ratchet said. Did you see that thing? It's still here, isn't it? He curled up tighter. Go away. Ratchet, Searchlight said. He's not going to kill you. You don't know that. Even if he wanted to, Soundwave and I wouldn't let him. It could kill you too. As soon as he stops being scared, he's going to get really grumpy. Ratchet, calm down. I will not calm down. He said, looking up a little. That thing almost killed me. I almost offlined. Ravage wouldn't have hurt you, I said. Just jumped on him, Ravage thought. Ravage. I said. He looked at me. I didn't hurt him. I already apologized. Ratchet came uncurled a little and looked up at Ravage, who turned toward him and crouched as if to spring at him. Ratchet squeaked again and turned back into a little shuddering ball of metal. If I could have glared at Ravage, I would have. If he was going to behave like this, I ought to take him back to my room and not let him come. Searchlight got up and turned around to face Ravage, looking and feeling decidedly unimpressed. Really? Ravage slumped back a little. It's not funny, Searchlight said. Is too, Ravage muttered. I'll take him back to my room. What? Ravage complained. I looked at him. You unless you behave. Ratchet started to uncurl again, though he was still terrified. If it comes anywhere near me, he said, voice almost as shaky as mine. It's really okay, Searchlight said, and his voice surprised me with its earnestness, especially since he was so worried about what would happen as soon as Ratchet stopped being frightened. You know my creators work at a symbiote shelter. I know what a symbiote looks like when it's about to try to kill you, and I think Ravage is just being friendly. Ratchet snorted. Friendly, huh? Really, Searchlight said. He's not going to hurt you. Ratchet stood up and cycled a deep vent of air. Okay, he said. Okay, Searchlight said. So, we have a question. Ratchet shot an uncertain look at Ravage. That thing is horrifying. What, Searchlight? I was studying. Oh, look at this mess. You scared me half to death, he said, bending down to pick up his data pad. If I don't study for this test, I'm going to fail the class. This had better be a good question. We're going to the park. You want to come? You came here to ask me that. Just wanted to be considerate, Searchlight said. You don't have to, if you don't want to. Ratchet gripped his data pad harder, considering throwing it. Okay, Searchlight said, noticing. I get it. He backed toward the door. Ratchet picked up another couple of data pads from the ground and climbed up onto the berth again, grumbling about idiots interrupting him and everyone trying to kill him. He was still unsettled after we left. I could feel it until he got far enough away he was out of my range. He's ridiculous, Searchlight said, feeling mildly amused. Something like that. If we hadn't gone and asked him, he'd be even more upset. He looked nervously at Ravage. I knew what he was thinking, but I waited for him to ask. Ravage really isn't going to hurt him, is he? No, I said. He won't hurt anyone. Actually, I'd be happy to rip quite a few people to pieces. Ravage pictured the bullies and Crescent, my caretaker. He's really cool, though. Searchlight said. You don't see many as big and dangerous looking as him. Ravage sat up straighter on my shoulders. Thanks. I'm surprised the bullies pick on you. Not my fault, Ravage said. He won't let me get at them, or even leave the room most of the time. If they ever come in there though, they'll be sorry. Searchlight said. Okay, do they even know you exist? You and Soundwave are friends? Ravage asked. I looked down. Yeah. We are. Right, Soundwave. I hesitated, then nodded. He doesn't seem too certain about that. I mean, we don't have to be friends if he doesn't want to. But it's not like he has any other friends, Searchlight thought. He's probably just not used to it. Every Mick needs a friend. Great, Ravage said. Can I come to your room sometimes? I saw an image in his processor of him chasing Ratchet under the berth. Sure, Searchlight said. No, that was not a good idea. Why? It's really boring in Soundwave's room all the time, Ravage said. And he keeps going to the library and your room. I was almost surprised to feel the real loneliness behind his words. Whenever I came back from working on the project, he was always happy to see me. I hadn't thought about the possibility that he might be lonely while I was gone. It wasn't like him to hide something from me. He probably hadn't done it on purpose. Symbiotes thought things more quietly. I was pretty sure it had to do with the fact that they didn't think very hard about anything. We passed a few other students in the hallways. Most of them stayed as far away from us as possible, afraid of me or Ravage. I reached out with my mind and pushed my range far enough that I could see where the bullies were. I found them pretty quickly. I couldn't tell their exact location, but they were far enough away that they were probably still in that hallway, waiting for us to come by and ambushing any passing students who were small enough to be good targets. I instinctively tried to pull back my range. My processor was already starting to hurt, even with only the thoughts of the students in the nearby hallways. But as usual, I couldn't. That had been a bad idea. We were going outside. I could stretch my range if I wanted, but it was impossible to withdraw it. I had to wait for it to retract on its own. It would retract, but only so far to a sort of base range. My base range was expanding slowly and steadily. Eventually, I was afraid it would get large enough to encompass the whole school, then the whole city. I didn't think my processor could handle that. I hoped it was a long way in coming, or that it stopped expanding. In any case, I would hold on as long as I could to sanity. I wasn't sure what would happen to Ravage if I lost it. No, I knew what would happen to him. Crescent would have him put down. Going out the front doors of the school, despite everything, felt good. I had been in there too long. Okay, Searchlight said. Well, there's a pretty big park nearby. I've been there a couple of times. Does that sound good? That sounds like somewhere I could run. Ravage purred his approval. I nodded as well. We turned onto another street. This one was a little more crowded, lined with small shops. If we had a whole horn and some credit, I might be tempted to get a transit ticket and go home, Searchlight said. I only live like one city over. I nodded slightly, hoping the park wasn't too crowded. If we went to any sort of densely populated area, I have a terrible processor ache. You don't get out much, do you? Searchlight asked. Nope. How far away do you live? I mean, it has to be a ways since you're boarding at the school. I looked down, trying to figure out what to say. He doesn't like talking. You don't have to answer. I lived here. Just a 20 bream walk away. Ravage leapt down from my shoulders and walked alongside us. There have to be times, Searchlight said, sounding surprisingly thoughtful, when there's something you want to say, and you can't. I shrugged. If there was anything I absolutely had to say, I usually did. That's got to be awful. I was used to it. Most of the time. It could be frustrating though. Why doesn't he get help? What kind of help? Medics. There wasn't much they could do about my stutter, and I wasn't sure I wanted anyone to try to replace my faceplate and the mind reading that had to be kept secret. There has to be something they can do about the stutter. Has he even seen a medic about it? Everyone asked that question. The confusion of Mecha walking and driving on the street with us was starting to take its toll, and I couldn't concentrate so much on where we were going or the direction the conversation was taking. Searchlight talked mostly, and I nodded at appropriate times. My creators had to work really hard to get me into this school, Searchlight said. We're only lower middle class. This school's for the rich like Verdict and the geniuses like Ratchet. I guess I should be really grateful, but I kind of miss home. It's kind of weird being away from my creators so long. Though you won't hear me admit that often. I'm the quiet, uncomplaining type. He grinned. So you're, I said. He laughed. Yeah. And Ratchet's got an even temper, and you never shut up. Exactly. Ravage was starting to get confused. Sarcasm, Ravage. I couldn't say it out loud, though. It was slip-ups like that that lost me friends. They could tell there was something different about me, that I knew more than I ought to. We approached the park. It was reasonably large, with hills and arenas for games and even a little crystal garden. Ravage bounded away as we reached the edge of the park, then stopped and turned to face me. Can I? I nodded. He turned again and streaked away. I paid attention to his thoughts until he got out of range. Ravage could handle himself most of the time, but if someone reported a wild symbiote on the rampage and enforcers got involved, I would want to know about it and be there. There were a lot of mecha at the park. Fortunately, they were spread out enough that my range didn't cover too many of them. A group of fledglings about our age were playing a game with a hovering sphere. One team was trying to capture the sphere while the other was trying to defend it. Then, as we watched, the sphere was captured, and the team switched objectives. Searchlight wandered close to the outer edges of where they were playing. He was hoping they'd invite us to join. I didn't know the rules of the game, but Searchlight did, and so did the mechs playing, so I was able to start picking them up by listening. Eventually, one of them did notice us. Hi. He said, surprisingly friendly. Want to join? It must have been because I had Searchlight with me. No one had ever invited me to join a game like that. Sure, Searchlight said. Soundwave? I shrugged, a little apprehensive. The game came to a halt. Some of them were annoyed at the interruption. The sphere stopped, still hovering. I felt some stares and curious or apprehensive thoughts directed toward me. I was tempted to opt out of the game. They were all looking at me, wondering about my screen. There was a reason I didn't get invited to join games. I couldn't help being a little jealous of the ease with which they had accepted Searchlight though. He'll play, Searchlight said. Okay, one of the others said at length. The way he thought felt a little older. He was also, I had picked up, the owner of the sphere. One of you is going to have to join each team, so we can keep them even. We'll take the brown and white, one of the fledglings on the other team said. Kay, the older mech nodded, studying me. You'd better not be as fragging timid as you look. Timid. I didn't get that too often. But from his point of view, I did seem pretty hesitant. At least he didn't think I was creepy, like some of his friends did. I joined my team. My processor, already having trouble coping with all of the data it was receiving, was going to have a hard time keeping up with this game. We started again. I made a few mistakes at first and felt the antagonism of my teammates increasing with each of my slip-ups. Then I started paying more attention and trying harder. If I listened to everyone's thoughts and took them into account, it was almost as if I was watching the game from everyone's optics, and I knew exactly where I needed to be. It wasn't like actually being able to see through them, because I only really saw bits and pieces, but I could puzzle them together and get an overview of what was going on. My team was on the offensive when I finally figured this out, and we took possession of the sphere quickly. Then it switched. The idea of the game, the way you won or lost, had to do with how long it took you to recapture the sphere. When your team was on the offense, your timer was running, and when you captured the ball, it stopped. The first team to run out of time lost. My team managed to keep the ball for nearly 10 breams before it was taken again. The next time, only about half a bream later, I was the one to capture the ball. The other fledglings on my team were suddenly glad they had me. Searchlight noticed how well I was doing and was pleased with himself for insisting that I join. It took them a full 15 breams to recapture the ball from us. We'd come in the middle of a game where the timer had been set for a whole drawer. My team had been losing and down to only about a third of that time. But now the other team was right there with us. I was starting to work up the beginnings of a fairly severe processor ache, but I was too into the game to care. That didn't last all that long. I started slipping, and it took us 5 breams to capture the ball the next time, then 7 for them. They still had 20 breams left. We had 19. We lost 9 on our next turn, and then they only lost 8, but the game was very close. We only lost 4 breams the next time it was our turn to capture the ball. I put my entire processor to work trying to counter the strategy of the other team. By the time they recaptured the sphere, the teams were tied to within a few Ostroskins. Then a tall femme came over. Green fire, time to go home. The game paused. Come on, Lumia, the older mech said. We're almost done. No, the femme replied. You can come back next turn. Bring the sphere and let's go. Her optics flashed, and even if I hadn't been able to hear her thoughts, I would have known she meant it. Green fire sighed and collected the sphere, much to everyone's dismay. And now that I had nothing to distract myself, the pain in my processor hit me hard. I put a hand to my screen and turned off my vision for a few moments to give my processor a little bit more power. Sorry everyone, the older fledgling, Green fire, said. Next turn, maybe. Some nodded. Others thought regretfully about how they wouldn't be able to come. That was ASL, awesome capture, Soundwave, was it? Greenfire said, barely stopping himself from swearing in front of Lumia, who noticed and glared at him. I nodded. I didn't trust my voice box. See you. Greenfire left. The group dissipated. A few more congratulated me on the quick capture I'd made. Searchlight started up a conversation with one of the other fledglings, and I went to a bench and sat down. It couldn't probably would take drawers for the processor 8 to go away. I couldn't wait for my next upgrade. It would include a processor expansion, which always helped and would buy me several cortexes of sanity. Rabbit showed up a few breams later and instantly guessed what was wrong. He climbed up onto my shoulders, wrapped his tail around my neck, and rubbed his helm against mine, feeling miserable on my behalf. I reached up to stroke the plating behind his audios. Thanks, I muttered. I would be fine. It wasn't as bad as after that assessment. Searchlight finished his conversation and came over. We should probably head back. I got to my pids, trying to balance as Rabbit shifted. Is he alright? You okay? Searchlight asked. I nodded. He looks kind of unsteady. Did something happen during the game? You were really good, Searchlight said. I did not expect that. Have you played that game before? I hesitated, then truthfully shook my helm. Really? How did he learn the rules then? Just by watching us. That's pretty cool. He shouldn't be so impressed. It wasn't a very complicated game. Well, it was amazing in any case, Searchlight said. Are you sure you're alright? What's wrong with him? He thought back to my reluctance to come and wondered if it had anything to do with that. I am fine, I said. Rabbit hopped down off my shoulder so it was easier for me to walk, and Searchlight and I headed back to the school. It was getting dark. So that was fun, Searchlight said. I nodded slightly. Yes, very fun except for the fact that now I felt like my helm was about to fall to pieces. Well, it actually had been fun. It had also been a reminder that I couldn't have fun. Really, what is wrong with him? He didn't want to ask again. But at least he noticed. Most mecha wouldn't even have noticed that I wasn't acting normal. Maybe I should just shut up. He doesn't like talking. Maybe he doesn't like being around lots of mecha. I did drag him into this after all. And it began. When I didn't respond, even those who honestly wanted to befriend me started doubting that I wanted to talk to them. It was always just easier to let that happen, though. Maybe that made it my fault. I wasn't really trying. I dismissed the idea. I had tried in the past, once or twice. We got back to the school. Well, Searchlight said. See you tomorrow for the project. I think we can start writing the essay. Yuck, you can bring Ravage if you like, though Ratchet will probably throw a fit. Let's just not mention that to him. I nodded again and we parted. Ravage stayed close as we walked through the halls of the school. The bullies seemed to have left their post, so I took the fastest route to my room.